This
Now on the
conference will
wonderful
now be
property.
recorded.
I'm right now on the property of Camp Ronald McDonald for Good Times here in Southern California. We still have about 4 inches of snow outside, and it's about 30 degrees. So welcome to the crazy weather, because palm trees never change colors, but here and never get weather. But here we are in Southern California. So I know that that's nothing compared to many of you around the country with all the weather we have. So thank you for being a part of today and being a part of this presentation with regards to Gold Ribbon. We have a number of different slides that you'll have and that you'll see, and also just so that you know, is in case for reference, we're going to record this actual presentation and we'll post that up for you all as well. So I'm just going to kind of jump in. If there is questions along the way, and those of you that do have mics, please do jump in as we go through if you need clarification or have questions. And if I'm going to ask either Don or Jennifer if they can keep an eye on the chat box for those that are here that maybe do not have their microphones available. So with that, let me just kind of start right off and see if the technology is going to work. Nope, I have to do this, and then I have to do this. There we go. So first, I just wanted to get all of our lenses kind of in the same page with regards to COCA Gold Ribbon. Some of you that are on this call may or may not have been in past Gold Ribbon self-assessment. Now we're in Gold Ribbon accreditation. What does this all mean, and what's the point? So I just wanted to kind of make sure that we're all kind of in the same lenses as we kind of move forward. So this is kind of a statement that talks about the accreditation program, and really this is intended to be an educational program for our membership, to really have a chance to help camps identify policies and practices that are specific to their setting and their population. With regards to going forward with accreditation, we're really taking a look at the documentation with regards to that and making sure that they're delivered. And that's really kind of our goal. And also the scope of the COCA accreditation really is primarily on the medically and emotionally safe practices within an oncology camp experience. So what we are, once again, foundational elements to a safe program. The Gold Ribbon program in some ways has been going on for a number of years, trying to help camps identify what those foundational practices are. And I say foundational practices instead of best practices is because really the goal of this is to say, what's the bottom line foundation for safety do you need? And we know that so many of our camps take it above and beyond that into really best practices. So these are really those foundational practices. Once again, in areas of policy and practice and implementation for our camps. Accreditation is a little different from the previous program that we had, in that accreditation really strives to have an objective third-party observation of that process. It's one thing for us to say, yes, we do that, yes, we do that, to check the sheet, we may have it, but really to have someone go out, visit those camps, see all the great things that our camps do, and then to be able to observe it in practice is just one of those verifications that allow us to really call it an accreditation. I did want to note that as you go through these standards and as you go through your thought process and putting these together, please know that this content at this point is really intended for those overnight camp experiences and day camp experiences. We're not really intended to be single day events, hospital programs, not really that. And actually, I should say that your gold standard, your Gold Ribbon committee is actually working, even taking a look at how day camps and family camps are maybe different than maybe a typical summer resident camp, and if some adjustments need to be done in the future. But for right now, this is the body of work, and that's kind of where we're going. What these accreditation standards are not, and I want to be real clear about this, is they're not a collection of how-to documents. If you came on this call for us to be able to say, great, here's the manual, here's the wording, just do all this, and you're good, that's not what they are. Really what these standards are is something for you to kind of consider on what are those areas in which your camp, I'm sure, already has documentation, practices, and procedures, and it just has you go through and it may be in some areas where you may not, to make sure that those are documented and those are there so that you can ensure a safe program. as well, it's not a prescription of practice. We're not telling you how to do things. What we really want to do is, how do you do things? And with policies and procedures and practices, hopefully you have internal processes just to make sure that, once again, you're doing the best you can and you're constantly monitoring those. The other part that I want to put this is the standards accreditation process. When visitors come out, it's not intended to be an inspection. We intentionally say it's a visit, because inspection, we all have inspections, whether or not if it's health departments or others that maybe come to our facilities or to our camps. This is really a visit just to be able to hear about your camp, see what policies and practices are, a chance also just to see that and to verify that those are actually being done. So that is so that's just kind of a clarification point. Benefits of the Gold Ribbon accreditation. If these aren't things that you've considered, we like to bring this up. But once again, it's an education. It's a chance for camps to take a look at what they do based on some of the best minds that are out there that are a part of this Gold Standards Committee and have reviewed in the medical and psychosocial fields, just to say, what are those foundational best practices? So it's kind of an opportunity to mentor on the outside and to really see what others are, or to ask good questions to see whether or not if you have certain things in place. Confidence. One of the things that I know that I've found in my program, and I've heard also from so many others, is that when you have things that are written down, when you have things that are established, it gives confidence to the idea that making camp run easier. Even if I'm a 1-week camp, which I've done, or whether or not if you're a year-round camp, but having these practices, procedures documented, they're there, they're available to be constantly evaluated, but then also to share with others, whether or not as your program progresses and as it goes on in serving the youth and the families that we serve. Lastly is stature. Accreditation is one of these things that tells our parents, our donors, community members, and yes, those that are out there, that your organization values safety in these areas and that you're following these industry practices. And it should be something that we hope that you can be able to share and can provide credibility. I talked a little bit earlier about this Gold Ribbon program, that we had a Gold Ribbon self-assessment program that actually started in 1993 and really went through until 2017. We've actually retired the self-assessment Gold Ribbon program. We've actually kept the name Gold Ribbon, but now it's a Gold Ribbon accreditation standards. And this just shows the transition from being a self-assessment to being a document verification, as well as a visit kind of program. It kind of raises the bar, shall we speak. Other piece that I wanted to share with this group, and I don't know if we're going to have to employ it this year, but as we ramp up from being to actually visiting camps and having volunteers help us out to visit your camps, for instance, this summer, and your programs, we realize that as we ramp this program up, we may not be able to hit and actually physically visit every camp. We think we will be able to this summer, but like, for instance, next summer, we might have 23 camps that need to actually go through the Gold Ribbon Standard program. And so we've actually kind of created what we call a Gold Ribbon Standards accreditation, where it will include a document review, a peer visit. And by the way, once you go through this, then it's technically good for 5 years, as long as you sign a statement and agree that you're following those practices each year. One of the things that we're concerned about as we go forward is we may not be able to do all the peer visits, but we do want to make sure we do a document review. And with that, they would still be Gold Ribbon with regards to their standards. They just wouldn't have that visit. And that's just kind of us to, just in case we feel those growing pains. But actually, there's a lot of people that have come forward to help us to be visitors. So as we go through this, and as you go through your process at your camp, this is my commercial. Please think about being a visitor. It's a great way to see other camps. It's a great way to see the way other people do things, and it helps out really oncology camping quite a bit. So something to think about. Timeline. A lot of people kind of talk about what the timeline is with regards to the standards program. So here's kind of a quick timeline just to let you know. This accreditation workshop on this online webinar, we're asking those camps that are going to be going through the process for next summer that they attend. We did one at the national conference. We're doing this online webinar as well, and we're also recording it. We also have considered doing documentation support sessions in a webinar. That's one of the questions I'm going to ask at the end, is whether or not if this group that's on this call, if they would like to kind of have a town hall meeting webinar where you could log on if you have any questions about any one of the specific standards, kind of a working session on, well, what do you have in place, or what are some of the things you might think about in order to either achieve the compliance documentation for different standards. So we're open to that. So think about that as we move forward. This next upcoming month, which actually starts on Friday, we actually have, we're actually going to be assigning those visitors. And we'll talk a little bit about what we're going to ask you as camp leadership to do with regards to communicating with your assigned visitors, because that communication between you running the camp and those visitors that are going to be coming in is really important for setting up for success. And a lot of that has to do with logistics, but we'll talk about that, and that can actually start in March. One of the dates that I ask you to look at pretty strongly here is when the camp submits documentation for review. So all these standards that we have here, we're going to be asking for documentation in advance. We have found that by having documentation and having the visitor actually review that documentation before they actually come to camp is very, very helpful. That way, when they're at camp, they're familiar. They can just walk around and see what you do, see things in place, rather than having to come to your camp and go through a whole bunch of paperwork. So take a look at that March 30th. That's our goal for having you as a camp to actually submit your documentation. And we'll talk about how to submit that on the COCA portal in just a minute. Visitors, as I said, once that is actually submitted, then we ask those visitors that are assigned to your camp and to that visit to actually review that documentation. And we've given them some time to be able to do that. That might take some questions back and forth. They might have a question about some of the documentation, or ask, just some clarifying questions. So we wanted to give that process some time. Once again, the one thing we're asking for is that all those documents are accepted by the visitor, either through that conversation with you as a camp director and those visitors, that those are all accepted prior to the visit. Because we don't want to have to go through and do a whole bunch of paperwork there. And really, to be honest, we ought to have all that paperwork and all those policies and procedures in place before we actually launch our summer programs. So that's one of the expectations as well. Summer is the time for the on-site visit. And then after the on-site visits, we ask for reports with regards to the, and we, I should say, is the Gold Ribbon Standard Committee. We ask for reports from each one of the visitors with regards to the visit. Part of that will be the documentation acceptance. Some of that, and then the other parts will be what they were able to observe, what they saw, were you following the documentation that you provided? So they're going to submit that to the Gold Ribbon Committee, which meets in September. At that Gold Ribbon meeting, that's where the committee reviews all the documentation, all the reports, and then the standard committee actually submits a slate of camps to the board that meets in September and recommending accreditation. So I want to say this, and I share this with you so that you're aware, is that the people that are making a determination about whether or not if you meet these standards or if you're accredited are not the visitors. They're the ones that are just observing. That information then goes to the Gold Ribbon Committee, and the Gold Ribbon Committee will be reviewing those. And if we have additional questions, clarifications between a camp and a visitor, that's what will take part of that. But it's actually the Gold Ribbon Committee that recommends the camps to be accredited, and it's the board of Children's Oncology Camps Association that actually awards that accreditation. And then once again, the camps that have been through the program will then be contacted in October with regards to that results and that they're accredited. So at this point, I've gone through a lot of information. I'm just wondering if there's any questions at this point. Okay. Well, if there are, once again, type them up, interrupt me, all that. Ed, thank you for this so far. I appreciate that. I know I'm hearing some feedback. If you happen to be on and you're not talking right away, if you could just put your microphone on mute, that would kind of help for those that are listening. Everybody check their microphone. There we go. I appreciate it. All right, so let me go on a little bit about the goal of the on-site visit. So visitors are, like I said and previously, our visitors are there to witness standards, policies, and procedures while they're there at your camp. The visit and the visitors are not there to be obtrusive, to be even if nobody knows they're in camp except for the director, maybe some medical staff. That's fine. I mean, it doesn't have to be a big hoopla. You're there to do camp with your campers. That's what you're focused on. We're just there as visitors just to kind of see what you do and to ask some questions and to witness all the good things that you're doing. We're also there to promote collaboration between camps and visitors. If there are other things that camp directors are interested about, or those kind of things, it's a chance to kind of talk, to get clarification. I will be honest with you, as a visitor, one of the great things is I see some of the great things that our member camps are doing, and that's usually I'm the one that always says, can I borrow that idea and take it back to my camp? So please know that it's a very collegial relationship going back and forth, but that's kind of the goals for our visit. With regard to the team for the visit, so here's what you can expect, is that we would like to have the camp director or whatever that kind of management person is that's familiar with the Gold Ribbon program to be there. We would also like to either have the camp doctor or nurse, or once again, whatever medical professional is familiar also with the Gold Ribbon standards and with regards to how those policies and procedures work within the MedShed. We would like to have them present and a part of that on-site visit team. You will also, from COCA, there will be one volunteer peer professional. This is somebody who runs a camp somewhere, and you'll also have a COCA volunteer medical professional. So this could be anywhere from a physician to a nurse. We've had healthcare professionals, but they're a part of, but that peer professional and that medical professional will actually be that team. We do want to make sure that you're aware that this does take time away from the camp director, because they're going to be showing camp off. They're going, and also part of your doctor and nurse or whoever that primary healthcare person is, because they're also going to be sharing what their program is on there in the visit. So please try to arrange for a time for your visit, and you're going to be arranging that with your visitors. But please arrange a time when maybe it's not like when you have color wars and everybody has to be involved in color wars, and so the visitors don't really have a chance to kind of go around and visit. Try to figure out the best day would be for them to see the most programs, but also to have those conversations so that you can answer questions about your program, both medically, operationally, as we go through. Next part that I just wanted to go over was with regards to preparation for the on-site visit. So this is going to be a checklist that, a matter of fact, or part of a checklist that I hope that you'll make, you can refer back to, or we can provide you. But what we would really like to do, and we found over our few years of doing pilot visits and last year doing visits, is that the communication between you as a camp representative and the visitors is really important. Selecting the best date for the visit. When are most of your activities going to be observable? Sure, you might have an off-site experience. That's probably not the best day if the whole camp is going to be, going and doing a hayride at a local barn or something like that. May not be the best day for the visit. When is there going to be mostly in camp? When are medical services? When can they be observable? When does that happen during your day? And have these conversations so that we can select the best date and the best time of day to do a visit. And then once again, I mentioned again about the camp director and the camp healthcare professional that are available to spend some time with the visitor. They're also going to ask about the closest airport to the camp facility. Many of our visitors come from all over the country, and they'll fly in and be local. And so knowing what that best airport is, and closest may not be best, but it might be, is have that conversation just so that we can be responsible with our finances, but also in reimbursing and providing this for our visitors, but also so that they're close enough so that they can actually have access to your site. The other thing is that how do they get to the site, maybe from the airport? Can the camp provide rides for them? If they can't, that's understandable, but how do they get there from the airport? We've even had somebody that I put down here, do they need to take a car, a ferry, a rocket ship? We actually had visitors go over and they didn't realize that they had to drive, then take a ferry, and then there was some other mode of transportation before they could even get to the camp. And it just wasn't talked about. And it's kind of like, oh, that's awkward. So how do we navigate getting there? So have these conversations just to make sure that they know how they can get to camp. If you can provide rides, that's wonderful. If you have a volunteer that could do that, that'd be much appreciated. Once again, that just saves COCA dollars as well. And so, just kind of think about that. The other is, can the camp offer overnight accommodations? For many of our visitors, they might be traveling, as I said, from other parts of the country. And so in order to make the time of the visit, they might need to spend the night before or the night after. If you don't have accommodations at your camp, that's okay. We can put them up at a local place. What would you maybe suggest as a reasonable local place to stay? But if you can, that would be great, as long as it's appropriate, understanding that they're non-staff individuals and they're adults. And so putting them in a cabin with kids just so they can spend the night, we don't want to be intrusive into your program at all. But if you do have a place for a couple of adults to sleep and that kind of thing, let them know that would be, so that they can make arrangements in that way. The other thing is, can the camp offer meals during the visit? It might go over a period of time, that it might be over a lunch or maybe into dinner or that kind of thing. Is that something camp can provide? If you can't, totally understand that. But if you can, that once again, the visitors would appreciate that, or they can make other kinds of arrangements. So once again, this is just something that I asked for you to think about, especially because I know like day camps, it's kind of like, oh yeah, the kids bring their own lunches. Well, the visitors don't know that. They can bring their own lunches. They just need to know ahead of time. So this is some of the things just to have a conversation with your visitors when they kind of call. Questions about this or comments? Okay. Oh, I see someone saying, oh, Don just wrote down, just in case you know, in the chat, that we'll provide a detailed list of these items for each camp to review and to check off. So thank you, Don. Appreciate that. But going as oh, I'm sorry. Was there a question? Nope. Okay, then I'll continue. So an overview of a visit. Once again, when the visitors arrive, they're going to be looking to take a tour of your program, of your activities and actions. They want to see what you're doing, the great things you're doing with kids. That's why we all love what we do. And so they're going to want to go around and see those activities that are open and available. They're also going to want to take a look at your medical administration, your medical services, and how that works. Because once again, that's a big part of what the standards are, just to see those in practice. Also, just be aware that visitors might very well just like have conversations with counselors, program leaders, other healthcare providers. I mean, they just want to find out the good things that you're doing at camp and how that all works. So it's not like they're trying to necessarily pry or do those kind of things. But once again, they're camp directors as well. I know that one of my favorite things is just sitting down with a kid at archery and saying, so what do you like best about this week? Tells me a lot about that camp program. So just be ready if your visitors do ask questions of others, maybe how certain things work. It's just another way just to kind of say, are these standards in action? And also, we just love the way camp works. Okay. At this point, before we actually get into the standards, I wanted to talk a little bit about how those standards, how you're actually going to provide us that documentation for review. And so at this point, I wanted to turn this over to my friend Don, and I think I need to give this control back to you, Don, as the organizer. So I'm going to do, did I do that? Change presenter to, oh, yes. So Don, are you back on with us? Or did I not do that right?
Okay, let me see here. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, now I can see it, Don.
Okay. All right. I've got everybody muted here. We're going to go through this pretty quickly. Basically, this is the portal that we have set up. It's under development. It will be for probably the rest of my lifetime. but at any rate, the idea here is to provide a platform for each one of the camps to access this portal, and it's basically a relatively simple step-by-step process by which you can upload individual documents that address the specific standards. Subsequent to that, once that process is complete, our reviewers can come in then, take a look at those documents, approve them as required, and comment on them. So if everybody can see this screen, we will be sending you in the next day or two all the necessary links as well as the login information. I am going to be logging in as the administrator, so you're going to be seeing some things a little bit different than your experience will be, but they'll be hardly be noticeable. So when you log in, the first screen you're going to see is this gold ribbon portal. The second thing you're going to see is it's under construction. Get used to that because it's going to be like that for a while. But at any rate, it is functional. We did use it last year, and it seemed to work quite well. When you get to this portal, what you're going to want to do is go over to campsites. Now, in your particular case, your specific camp is going to show up here. No other camps will. This isn't, like I say, this is an administrative screen, so we can access all the camps, but from the standpoint of privacy, you will be able to see your camp information. The people that come in to review the documents will be able to see your information, but nobody else other than the administrator. So I'm going to just, for right now, I'm going to pretend that I'm Camp Good Times from Canada. So you will be greeted with this screen, and the really key piece of information that your next step, it really is the one you're going to be spending almost all your time on, is the camp dashboard. One small comment here is the gold ribbon standards. We have links on almost every one of the screens, so at any given time you can click the link and you will be able to see a copy of all the most recent gold ribbon standards for purposes. So I just made that go away. That was great. Guys, you're going to have to give me a minute here because I'm going to have to log back in. Here we go. This will take just a second. I just love technology sometimes. I got to tell you, it's just a wonderful thing. Here we go. Okay, so let's go back over to Camp Good Times. As a camp, where you're going to want to go is to the camp dashboard down here in the lower left-hand corner. And what you have, and this will be branded for each one of your individual camps, is really the sum and substance of this particular screen. As you scroll down, you notice that there are the gold ribbon standards are listed: 1.1, 2.1, 3.1, 3.2, on and on and on. So the screen is quite deep. This will be changed, but right now this is kind of where we are. What we ask you to do as a camp is this: is you identify the gold ribbon standard that you want to address. Over here, this is simple. You've seen this probably throughout the web, where you can upload a particular file. That particular file is the one that you extract from your policies that address the content and intent of that particular gold ribbon standard. So it's a pretty simple thing. You click Browse, find the policy that you want to attach to that particular standard, click Submit. From your standard, from your position as the applicant camp, that you do that same thing 26 times, or I think there's 26 individual standards here. But the idea is to have a file submitted for each one of the standards. The reviewers then will come in. There are actually some fields over here by, reviewed and accepted. They will not show up on the camp portal. when our reviewers, visitors log in, there are areas here where they can indicate the initials, who reviewed your policies, and then there are check boxes adjacent to the reviewed and accepted so that we can track at any given time which one of your policies have been uploaded, as well as the reviewers can go in and indicate their review or acceptance. This big box here is simply a comment box at any given time. Feel free to input your comments there. In addition to that, if it turns out to be easier for you to copy your policies, you can actually copy and paste your policies right into those comment boxes. So we're trying to make this as flexible as possible. When you've gone through the process, if you at any time, I would suggest you save this form, because if you exit out of this form without saving it, your work is going to be lost. So just make a point. You browse, find your file, click submit. When you click submit, what that does, it just uploads that particular file onto our servers. But at the end of the day, you want to, before you exit this particular form, make sure you click save. Not to oversimplify this, but I don't want to overcomplicate it either. Like I say, it's a pretty straightforward process. Once you've done it once, you just need to do it 25 more times, but it's almost identical. What I will do is I am going to go ahead and unmute everybody. So if you have questions, please call out and let me know how we can respond. So, anybody have questions on this?
Hey, Don, this is Brian. A point of clarification. So as a camp comes on, if, for instance, in that particular time on the portal, if I just upload documents, let's say for 1 or 2 or 3, I can save those, and then I can come back later and I can upload the rest of them. I don't have to do it all at once, or do I?
No, you can do it in pieces. You don't have to do it all at one time. The kind of files that can be uploaded are everything from Word documents to PDF files. Practically any kind of file that is suitable and easiest for you to use. So we've tried to make this as flexible as possible. Now, I will tell you and encourage you, if you're ever up on the portal and something doesn't make sense, it's not working the way it should, please, my name is right there at the top of that. Pick up the phone, call, send me an email message, and we will work through that with you. The last thing we want to do is to have this become, as opposed to a tool, but have it become a barrier to getting this process completed. So. No questions? Please, somebody speak up. Brian, I have more questions than they do right now about this portal, I guess. Do you want to wrap? Yes.
If you have something that's not applicable, that as well, or you just leave it blank.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that, please?
If you have a standard that's non-applicable, how would you like that?
Right.
Well, if it's not if it's not applicable, don't upload it. Number one, if it's hard for you to make the distinction, what I would do, if you have a set of standards and it's just easier for you to upload them all, go ahead and upload them all. But in that comment box, please just make a note that in the attached file, the file that you uploaded, just make a note on what page or what paragraph you want is the appropriate policy relative to the standard itself.
Yeah, and if there's one that's not applicable, just in that general box, you can just put not applicable.
Yeah.
And that way you don't have to upload anything. But yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Hey, I also see a question from Lauren. Can you see past visit recommendation in the portal? And Lauren, I don't know if you have a mic, but I'm kind of unclear what you're asking.
Sorry.
saw Lauren try to get on there.
Yeah.
Are you there?
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, we've just had some staff turnover, and so I don't have any information on some of our old camps. And with CAPOC dissolving, I'm not sure if like they would have sent over recommendations from past visitors to our camps, so that I could review it before going in to a new visit.
Got it, Lauren. Go ahead, Don.
I think the answer, unfortunately, to that is no. That would reside with CAPOC.
Okay.
We don't have any of that historical information. I will tell you, I think I have to work with Jennifer on this. We do have a checklist, and I'm not sure if we sent that out already or not. But I actually, truthfully, Lauren, it was padded to a great extent after some of the documentation that CAPOC published. Pre-visit checklist, and if you haven't gotten it in the packet, we will make sure you get a copy of it. Yes.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Any other questions about the portal at this time? All right. Well, Don, I tell you, why don't you pop it back over to me and we'll continue on.
Yeah, my last appeal is please pick up the phone, call, contact me if you need any help whatsoever. Okay, Brian, I think you're on.
Yes, I am. Oh, look there's a slide that talks about documentation for the portal. So some tips. This is some things that we've found that would really help out our visitors with regards to reviewing documentation. Once again, there's a couple different ways to do this. And this is what we find that our wonderful camps have so many different ways that they organize their documentation or their policies and procedures. There are some that have it all in one body of work, one big giant Word, let's say it's a Word document. And that's fine, that works for them. What would be most helpful is for you to help with regards to a specific standard to either reference where that is in that body of work or highlight it, or even better, just copy and paste that page out and put that in. So that they don't have to necessarily read the entire document. So once again, you can upload a specific document from each standard or provide a reference page, specific documentation if it's in a manual. Also, if you have that wonderful little highlight feature, you can do a highlight on that specific wording that maybe relates to the compliance for a certain standard. That just makes it helpful for the visitor to kind of get through the review of documentation. So think about that. And we have it all ways. We have one camp that just does their whole manual. And as you saw on the upload, they didn't upload the manual a whole bunch of times. They did it once. And then in each one of those dialog boxes, they said, please see page 6 and 7 for this. Please see page 9 and paragraph 4 for this one. So whatever works best for you. We don't want to make it more laborious than it needs to be on both sides, either for the camp or for the visitor. So just kind of an idea, just kind of a helpful thought with regards to how you're going to do that, so that we can support both sides is appreciated. I got to get back on here. So let's take a look. So what I want to do is kind of do a review of the standards, of how they're organized, and then we'll even take a look at a couple of the standards and talk about what compliance means. So within the standards that COCA has, you'll see there's a few things. In that standards packet, there is there's a section with regards to definitions. And it defines what a camper is. It defines what a staff member is. It defines what a COCA camp organization is compared to a site that they may use. So if you're looking through the standards and you're not quite sure exactly what they're referencing, please take a look at that definition section. Also within that, there's also the gold ribbon visitor report worksheet that we're going to ask them to kind of work with when they come and visit you. just have they gone through and taken a look at all the various things in your camp. The other, then the actual standards are actually broken up into 6 sections. One is the general section. We'll take a look at one in there. There's one that has to do with clinic affiliation. What affiliations do you have specifically with those healthcare providing organizations in your area? There's one about general administration, one about staffing, and then there's one about healthcare, and there's one specifically with regards to psychosocial support. So these are each numbered 1 through 6. So as you go through, like if we're taking a look in a minute, we're taking a look at section 5. You know that section 5 is healthcare because of course it's the 5th one on this list. I know that, but you'll soon learn that as you go through. But that's how the standards are actually organized within the document. You will see next to each one of the standards that there's a few sections. One actually has the standard wording. It actually says what the standard is asking to see. Then there's something that's called an intent statement. And the intent statement really tries to further kind of describe what the intent of the standard is with regards to how it relates to your program and how it relates to how you execute your program. And we'll see a couple of those in a minute. Then there is a section that's called compliance. This compliance will actually say, hey, we're looking for documentation. If it even is a little bit more specific to what that documentation might be, but that's going to say, great, in order to kind of comply with the standard, here's what we're looking for. And most of it, you'll see that there's an icon down there that says written documentation. I want to say that most, if not all but 2, I believe, of our standards within this body of work ask for some kind of documentation. And that can be a policy, it can be a procedure, it can be a description of practice. It really just depends, but it does ask for things to be documented. So you'll see that as a part of the standards as you go through. So what I thought, just to kind of jump in, is to take a look at a couple of these standards. And this is once again where would love just to get your questions. But this is standard 1.1. This is the one that really is the general section. And this one, as you can see, as we read it through, it's asking whether the camp, and that would be the COCA member, is actually the camp. The camp is not the facility, but the camp is actually the COCA member. Is the camp accredited by a recognized association and or meets the best practice established by a governmental body that is responsible for the oversight of all camp programs and operations? So that's kind of the general standard. And to let you know that the reason that we do this is we know that COCA has not taken on basic camp operations. We have only really taken a look at the medical and psychosocial parts of a camp operation specific to pediatric oncology. But we did realize that it's important for camps that operate and serve these children to make sure that they are meeting general camp association best practices. So we kind of deferred that to different to others. Now that could be your governmental agency in the state of Connecticut has a very robust inspection program with regards to licensing your camp operation. And or you might be a member of the Ontario Camp Association or the Canadian Camp Association or the American Camp Association. And those all have, once again, very robust programs to, once again, accredit, review, look at documentation having to do with everything from transportation to food service to program, how you do archery, how you do canoeing. So they're really best at doing those rather than COCA is. And so we've decided to partner with these organizations and ask camps to partner with these organizations to make sure that they're that when they provide programs that they're following these recognized associations or governmental bodies with regards to providing their services. So that's kind of the intent behind that. Now you can see there's actually a couple sections. One says, does the COCA camp provide activities and services? And have they been reviewed as a part of accreditation program? Has ACA, has OCA, has somebody gone through and done that? Or does the camp provider of programs and activities meet this meet criteria set out by a recognized camp association or industry best practices. So industry best practices could be governmental agencies if it covers all those for your program. If it doesn't mean you have to be accredited by Ontario Camp Association or the American Camp Association, but it does say that you set out to meet those criterias with policies and procedures. So you can answer, if you answer, the first one has been reviewed by accreditation program, that's great. If you haven't, then what does the camp do to meet those standards? How do they review those? How do they go about documenting those is what we're asking for. So that requires a little bit more work on your side. Now you'll notice that the standard also has the COCA camp provided activities and services, and then you have activities and services provided by others. This is because we know that many of our members rent other camp facilities, lease other camp facilities, get donated camp facilities, rather than have their own facility. So some of these best practices have to do with things that maybe you rent from another. It could be a horseback riding program you rent from another. It could be a canoe or a rafting trip that you contract with someone else. It could be food services and where you sleep that you rent from somebody else. So this actually asks that those activities that are provided by others, are they either reviewed by accrediting camp association, or do they provide documentation that they meet those standards? So that's one of the things that we just wanted to make sure in 1.1, and this is kind of an inclusive one, but it really gives you a chance to look at. To be helpful, one of the things that inside your standards packet, that for COCA standards packet, you will see this document that's called the Gold Ribbon Accreditation Inventory Worksheet, where it defines what the COCA camp provides, what other provides, and it goes through a litany of different services, healthcare services, camper supervision. Who provides supervision for the campers? Are the counselors from the campsite that you're renting, or does the COCA camp provide those? And if the COCA camp provides those, who makes sure that they're meeting the best practices with that? Is it a governmental agency, or is it a camp industry agency? Site and facilities. Who make sure that their buildings are up to code, that the sleeping areas are safe, fire systems are safe, emergency evacuations, that they have enough toilets, showers, all those kind of things. So who determines that? Once again, is it governmental? Is it a camp? Is it a camp association? Food services, you can see here, if you provide camper transportation to and from activities or to and from the camp for your campers, what is that like? And then it talks about activity delivery. Who's taking a look at archery? Who's taking a look at your boating program, your canoeing programs? Who takes a look at those? And you can see others that depending on what your programs are. So who's providing those? If the COCA organization provides those, then what are you doing as a COCA organization to make sure that you're meeting those foundational practices within camping? Do you get accredited by an association, or are you familiar enough with that that you document that just as if you're accredited? That's what we're kind of looking for. And once again, you can see, so hopefully this checklist can be helpful to you. Questions about what we're asking? Okay, then I'm going to move on along. So here's another standard that comes up in actually the healthcare section that we have found that a lot of people have questions about. So this one basically asks, does the camp have written protocols available that are on site? And a matter of fact, I think I even did something, yes, that are available that are specific to your camp operation. And that's really what we're looking for. And then it lists a number of different kinds of situations where it's determined that having written protocols specific to your camp operation are available, so that those that are providing healthcare know what the camp expects from them. And it's also familiar, and it also is specific to your camp operation. Now, the reason that we do specific to the camp operation is exactly this. And a matter of fact, I wanted to go down and say the intent of this is, once again, what are those common incidences that may occur dealing with a pediatric oncology population? And then The camp should review and must review protocols to account for the program's specific location, the scope of practice for those healthcare providers that are on site with you, and the time and distance and access from advanced medical support. So many of our camps, we realize, go in and say, hey, I'm affiliated with Children's Hospital in my local area. I'll say Children's Hospital Los Angeles. And so they actually have a protocol with regards to how to deal with neutropenia. So I'll just take theirs and use theirs. But their protocol might be specific on how they deal with that if it's in their hospital and their hospital's situation. It may not be completely relevant with regards to your camp, your setting, who you have on staff, and how far you are away from advanced medical support. So you may need to customize these, and that's actually what we're asking you to do, is to customize these if you use someone else's. It's always good to use resources, but how do you make sure it's specific for your site? So when a visitor comes up, they're going to be, reviewing, number one, ahead of time your documentation, and to see whether or not, if it mentions, oh yeah, you call a code whatchamahoot and somebody from this department in the hospital will come. Well, does that work for your camp? How are you making sure it's specific? So this is what we just wanted to make sure that that you as a provider took a look at. And by the way, just to be helpful with this, is I'm going to put in another document right over here. This is something that was just created, literally hot off the press, by members of the COCA committee to take a look and saying, so for each one of these different issues that might arise at a pediatric oncology camp with related to 5.2, when reviewing someone else's protocol or developing your own, what are some of the questions you ought to ask with regards to communicable disease, with regards to chickenpox and shingles, with regards to central line care, all of these. Now, I will say right now, if you take a look at this one that has to do with IV and oral chemotherapy administration at camp, your camp might say, there's no situation where at our camp facility we would do IV or oral chemotherapy. We would not provide that they would then go back to their hospital. And that's fine. That would actually be, and compliance to this would actually be a statement such as that, is that, camp will not provide IV or oral chemotherapy administration at camp. You might have a procedure that says if a camper signs up for camp and needs that IV or oral chemotherapy administration, that you will help support to transport them back, or ask a parent to come up and pick them up, or however that needs to be. But that's the kind of thought process and documentation process we ask you to go through with regards to these different issues. And you can see fever, neutropenia, anaphylaxis, transfusion. You might decide we're not going to do transfusions. Some of you might say it's important for us to do those so these kids can actually have this experience. So it varies over all of our camps, but that's just where we want you to consider where your camp addresses these, and to document that, even if it's, so to speak, an NA, it doesn't apply to us. Please document why it doesn't apply to you, because you have a policy that says you will not do transfusions at camp for the safety of the campers and the reasons why, and that if a camper needs a transfusion, here's how you're going to proceed. That way, it's just good documentation for your organization. And then once again, you can see about AROs. You can also see about hazardous waste and how you deal with those. So this is once again one of those standards that has a lot of pieces to it, and a lot of camps look for resources, as they should, but how to make sure that they're specific for your particular program. Questions? Also, I would say the last piece of this is, please know that at the compliance standard right here says a written copy of these protocols signed by an independent licensed pediatric oncology provider in the last year. That's because things move so much. We want to make sure, are these still relevant for you? Also, we just want to make sure, and by independent licensed pediatric oncology health provider, that doesn't mean somebody that's not associated with your camp. They can be associated by their camp, but they're considered independent licensed. So that's just kind of a technical term. But it can be your camp doc. It can be an advisory committee, or a member of that advisory committee that will sign off on these. that is a way just to make sure that they understand, and also that your camps, and we want to make sure that they're at the camp so that those healthcare professionals at camp know what the protocols are. And so that's what we're looking for. So with that, questions? Cool. I'm going to kind of continue on here, actually. Oh, is there a question?
Yes. Deb from Camp I Hope. Do all of your positions that are out there have to sign, or were you just saying just one?
The standard only requires one, but do know that the standard talks about having these protocols available on site. So it's a good practice just to make sure that whoever is on site performing and providing healthcare services are aware of these protocols. But that doesn't mean they have to sign them. No.
Okay.
Now that you might choose that a part of their orientation for your program, if they're new to camp or if they are providing on site, that they've actually signed off on those, that they've read them and understood them, might be a practice you choose to have, but that's not required by the standard.
Okay. And then that other document, will that be available soon for us to look at?
I'm so glad you asked. So yes, a matter of fact, there is, and this is where we are, and this is where we're kind of working forward, is there is, and I'm showing it to you right now, there's actually a Google form, a Google Drive file that actually has examples and has this actual helpful resource for every single one of the standards. Now, right now, this is in a Google Drive that we can send you, and so you can see it's kind of listed by the different standard. So you can look and say, so what did this camp do? Or what is kind of a guideline to go on these? You can see this. Now, I want to put a big warning that these are not made to be duplicated and just, of course, now I'm showing you how old I am. I get out whiteout and change the name on the top. They're just there to give you guidance. So we just ask you just to kind of use that in that way. But this is a Google Doc that we will share with you. I think our intent is actually to also put this on the portal, access to all of these on the portal, so you can see those resources as well. Is that correct, Don? I'm going to say yes for Don, because we talked about that. So other questions? Great question, though. Other questions? Okay. I'm going to kind of move forward to... Oh, did I hear somebody? Nope. Okay. Oh, there's Don. Okay, I'm going to kind of continue on with this. So here's another one that is another, once again, healthcare standard that I want to share with you. That it says, does your camp have procedures regarding the collection, administration, and storage of camper and staff medications? Now, please know that it says campers and staff. Once again, the intent of this is, once again, to have some documentation with regards to when and how and by whom medications are collected. It also asks how medications are being secured from being mistaken. Now, one of the things that we have learned, and we've looked at this for youth programs, and many camps do this, that they may lock them into the health hut or the med shed or whatever using for their healthcare services, or have a locked cabinet. That's all fine. For travel trips or for family camps, that might be different. And but we're asking you as a camp to take a look at, how do you make sure that medications are secured and not mistaken while you're on those trips? In family camps, do you collect family meds, or do you say to the family they can distribute their own medications? But how do you make sure that they're not, especially in this day and age when there's a lot of abuse of medications, or someone just happens across it not knowing what it is, and there's a possibility for incidences and accidents to happen. So once again, we're just asking for, what are your policies and how do you do that? And then the last one says how the camp staff and parent or adult medications. Now, once again, we're not telling you how to do it, but we're asking you to document that. Some actually collect all staff medications and hand them out to staff. Some have them in their health hut and staff come by to take them. Really, we're not telling you how. We just want to know, what your policies and procedures with regards to dealing with those staff and adult medications. And understanding that once again with that, you also have privacy issues and all those things. So once again, this is kind of a great demonstration of not being prescriptive on how to do that, but asking you to take a look at that whole system of medication administration all the way through. Staff, parents, campers, different kinds of delivery styles. Questions on this one? Okay. Those were the ones that I had, that I just wanted to make sure that you all had a chance to kind of take a look at. And I think they're good demonstrations of ones that we've seen that people have questions about. I have one more slide here just to kind of say, so what now? I know we're a little ahead of time, and I want to be respectful of your time, but also just open up for questions. So here's the what next, and we can go from there. Number one is take a deep breath. Documentation and all this, I know all of our camps do, but collecting it all and sharing it all will take some time. So really from here, it's about reviewing your standards, collecting that documentation. Please feel free to ask questions. And once I get done doing this, I would love to hear feedback from you if you are interested in having, as I said, a March webinar just to kind of do, it's kind of like a, it's really for you folks as your camp's going through this process to come in and say, I got a question about this one. How would I address this one? Give me some recommendations. Give me some thoughts, just so that we can help you through this process. The big date to take a look at is March 30th. We're asking you all to upload that documentation to the COCA Gold Ribbon portal by March 30th. That way, that way it'll actually give time for us to review all of these before the summer season, and we're off and going. The last is in March. We are going to be assigning visitors. You will be notified of that as well as the visitors were. And I ask you early on to please connect with them. Don't wait until 2 weeks before camp because people have to make arrangements. And the earlier that people can make arrangements, it's just financially easier for us with regards to travel and where to stay and also people's calendars. So as soon as you get that, if you can just make a note to reach out to each other and once again, talk about travel, talk about dates, talk about, accommodations, meals, that kind of thing. And then really after that, it's just do the good work you do in supporting these kids and working with all these volunteers to have a great summer experience that they wouldn't be able to have otherwise. And enjoy the visit. Enjoy when people come out there. So that's kind of what's next. Two last references for you, and then I'm going to open this up for questions. Is right here is my email address. So please feel free at any time, day or night, to email me with questions, with clarifications, any of that. That's great. I'll do my best to get back to you as quickly as I can. Also, Jennifer, who's our Assistant Executive Director, she's also the one that has put together so many of these resources and works on a lot of these logistics. Here's her COCA email as well. So please jot these down, take a screenshot of this so that you can use this as you kind of move forward. And then with that, I'm just going to open it up to questions. People have questions with regards to a specific standard or with regards to our process or what the expectations are.
It's just that the bald guy with the beast in him, that's him. And
any questions, any feedback?
I don't know if it's. That's right, she's in this other group. Oh, she is? Okay. Yeah.
Whoops. I don't want you to look at me twice.
But I need to go back and watch.
Will the slides be coming out?
Yes, I'll actually publish these slides out and we'll send them to you as well. Definitely.
And then if you have a campsite that you rent that's ACA or state accredited, do you need to get their certificate to upload?
That would probably be the easiest thing to do. Is yes, if they have a certificate to upload, a health department visit, those kind of things. Yeah, take those and upload. That's probably the easiest, the best way to go. I would recommend that. Others? Well, golly, this is where I always get nervous that I've given too much information in a short period of time and you're going to leave this and then have all these questions. But hence, that's why we put our email addresses right there, so you can do that. And please, as you go through the process, ask those questions. Let me just ask, does anybody out there, would it be helpful for us to take a look at a date or two to have kind of a let's work on your standards webinar, just so that you can ask questions and it can be a conversation back and forth? Anybody feel like that would be helpful?
Yes.
I heard a yes?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Would this time still be better? Is there a better time? I know this is a weekday. I know some people, they might have day jobs and it's like a weekend. What would work best? Any recommendations? Okay. Well, what I tell you what we can do is that I'll just work with the staff, with Don and Jennifer. We'll pick a date and send it out or two, and provide about an hour throughout the next month, just where people can kind of pick one, pick another, and do that. Or once again, you can always use our emails and ask from there. Others? Any others? Cool. Well, I appreciate this time. I hope this has been helpful. The other thing that I would just ask you to do for the good of COCA and the good of this fledgling gold ribbon accreditation programs is if there's any improvements that you'd like to see in this kind of an orientation. And you may not know this until after you go through your visit. But all the way along, please know that our ears are open. We really appreciate the feedback. There's been lots of people before us that have made recommendations and thoughts. Hopefully that this information is good for you. So here's what you can find. So please do share those. So in ending, here's what I'll say is that you're going to get an email with access to that portal. You will also get either that Google Drive with the samples, either be up on the website, or if it's not ready in time, we'll get you access to those as well. And then also we'll just make sure that you have our contact information so you can have so you can ask us along the way. And then lastly, you can probably see, I would say, by either later this week or next week, a kind of a work on your standards webinar time when we can get together and help people through. And I think that's my checklist. So with that, I guess I just say thank you to all for taking this time to be here. I hope that, like I said, it's been helpful. And we look forward to your visits this summer. And mostly I look forward to hearing about the great summer programs that you have this summer. And so with that, I'm just going to say goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you, Brian.
See you later, gang.